Alright, so we are back with yet another video. In this case, it's a friend's laptop, which is acting very strange. I'm gonna add in a small shot in the end of this video so you can see exactly what the problem was. I forgot to add it in during editing and I was way too lazy to go back and re-add it again. So let's proceed. And it's a good laptop otherwise. It's in perfect condition or close to perfect condition at least. So of course we want to see if we can't get this computer to work. And the issue with it is that the image disappears by itself after a while. It starts banding and go darker and darker and darker, and then the image is gone. Backlight is still working. It's just that you can't see anything on the screen anymore, more than the banding. And then all of a sudden it comes back and then it goes away again and it comes back. So it's acting kind of strange. So what I'm basically doing here is just taking it apart. There's nothing interesting with that. I'm pretty sure you have seen stuff like this before. Yeah, so I'm not gonna say much more, just enjoy, and I will be right back when I have more stuff to explain. I should mention, as you can see here, that I'm struggling with one of the screws. A lot of the screws are almost completely stripped, so there is nothing for the screwdriver to grab onto. So it was a bit tricky to get the computer apart and open, but I managed. So yeah, just enjoy. I'll be right back. And here I'm removing the hard drive, and I promise it was stuck in there. I had to pull with a lot of force, and I don't really like to do that. I had to go back and double check and make sure that I didn't miss any screws several times. And there we go. Now it came loose. But as I said, I had to put a lot of force on that hard drive to get it out. But it's out, and let's proceed with the repair. And I just keep on unscrewing the plastic shell. I was checking underneath the label also to make sure that there was no screws or anything hidden under there. I've been checking under the stands also, or the feet, or whatever you want to call it, the rubber pieces underneath that make it lay steady. I checked underneath those as well, and I couldn't really see any screws anywhere, so I'm not gonna bother anymore with that. Here I'm gonna cut the video, and here we come back again. And the reason why I cut the video at that moment was because I needed to go and grab some other tools and some other things, and instead of letting you sit and watch 3 minutes of absolutely nothing, it's better to cut away that part. So I'm proceeding and removing all the bottom screws, and here I'm using on my repair mat. I have like a grid with small holes where you can place all the screws. If you have screws that are longer or shorter or whatever, you can put them in the right order that you take them out. And I love that with those repair mats, because it's in some cases all the manufacturer are using the same length of screw for every screw hole, and then it doesn't really matter. But like in this case, where you have different types of screws and different lengths and different um, now my head completely stopped. The dimensions in general, it's so much easier if you can put them and keep them on the right spot. The repair mat is a little bit small though. I would like one it has a bigger format, but still with the same. I like the layout and I like everything with the repair mat. I would just like to have it a little bit bigger so it would fit a full-sized laptop if you're repairing that, or whatever it is. A motherboard fits, but as you can see with the computer in this case, it fits, but it's gonna block some of the holes, so that's why I had to move it further down here. So, and here I am prying it up carefully. There we go. And here I realize that it's still stuck somewhere, so there must be a screw I have missed. I'm still trying because maybe it's just stuck in the corner, but right about here is where I realized I must have missed a screw somewhere. So I go back and I try a little bit more. The thing is that you need to put a little bit of force when you're opening it, but if it's still stuck, if you miss the screw or something, if you pry too much, you're gonna break something, and that's not something we want. So here I start to go back and look, and here's where I realized I missed a screw. So it happens very easily, unfortunately, but as long as you're not breaking anything, that's not a problem. And if you feel resistance, then that's usually a screw that's stuck or a screw that you missed. So I'm gonna cut the video right here again, and I will be back in a second. There we go. I needed to go and use the restroom, so that's why I cut the video, because I can guarantee you that nobody wants to see me taking a leak. So here we are, and I'm just removing battery cables and everything else from the motherboard. And while I'm doing that, I'm also checking and looking ocularly for anything that looked burnt or damaged, or anything that is kind of obvious that this is a damaged part. So, but the rest is pretty straightforward for now. I'm just removing contacts and connectors so I can get the motherboard out and get a proper look on the backside as well. And I'm still doing my checks to see if I can't figure out what's wrong. And in a couple of moments here, I'm think I found the issue, and it's actually a pretty big problem. Depending on how you see it. If this is the reason why the screen is not working, fantastic. If it's not, well, then I fixed the problem that wasn't the problem from earlier. Uh, so, but let's see. I'm gonna continue and doing my ocular checks. And here I'm checking the screen connectors and everything also to see if I can see any bent pins or anything that's burnt around the connector to the screen. But I can't really see anything. Everything is actually, the computer was actually a lot cleaner than I expected. I was expecting to see a lot more dust and a lot more dirt than I did. And another thing that's good when you make a YouTube video like I'm doing is that if you can't fix the computer the same day, you might have to put it away for a week because you need to wait for tools or whatever it is that you need to do. Then during that week, you're gonna forget exactly where which screw went and so forth. So it's super nice to have that recorded. And because by doing this, I will always get back to the same spot. Here we go, and I try to remove the fan, but in this case the fan is stuck together with the now my head completely stopped again. The copper pipes that moves up that transfers all the heat and takes care of that. It's they are stuck together. The heat sink and the fan, they are stuck together in this case. In most laptops you can remove them or separate them, which is amazing because it makes it so much easier if you're just gonna clean it out. So, but here we are removing all the screws and everything for the heatsink, so we can get that away and keep on. Sorry for the clickety clacking in the background, but it's my dog. She don't really understand how a headset works, so every time I'm sitting and talking with a headset on, she thinks I'm talking to her, and she needs to go and check what the fuck are you talking about? Why? What? Who? When? Why? So, yeah. Uh, yeah, keep on going and doing some more cleaning on the way. And well, I haven't really started cleaning anything yet, but I'm constantly checking to see if I see something that you know sticks out from the ordinary, if there is something that's not as it's supposed to be. But I have to say that it was actually remarkably clean. There was very little dust inside this laptop. I'm usually used to see big hairballs and spiders and ants and all kind of crap in previous laptops or laptops that has been used for a while. But this was actually remarkably clean. So I can't really say that I felt disappointed by opening this. And here I'm checking again and removing more cables and stuff that has to be removed. Not everything has to be removed, but some things has to be removed. So, and I think it's right about here. In a couple of seconds, I start to see one of the issues with this laptop. I don't know if this is actually what's causing the screen to go dark and not work as it's supposed to, but I did find an issue. And the issue I found is a burnt capacitor. Yeah, here is my second issue. I have a loop, but that's very inconvenient. It's not convenient in any way for anyone by any means. So I'm gonna order either a microscope or a jeweler's loop or a watchmaker's loop or whatever you want to call it, that you can put directly on your head with built-in LEDs and stuff like that, so you have built-in light, and that's going to make everything easier. Of course a microscope would be better, but if you want a professional microscope, you're gonna have to haul up that wallet. I'm on a budget. I don't really have that much money to spend, but I can spend 20-30 euros on a proper jeweler's loop if that's gonna help me with all my job. This is more of a hobby for me, so I'm no professional by any means. I don't have a repair shop. I'm helping people out. If I can fix it, I will fix it. If I can't fix it, then no, then I won't ask for any money neither. I'm basically just doing this, or mostly just doing this, because I want more experience. And this is the one of the best ways to get more experience, to get people stuff to look at. And I mean, if I can't fix it, I will only just put it back together and return it to. Here I'm checking the now my head stopped again. Um, Checking the thermal paste, which usually dries up after a while, but in this it was still pretty soft. So I think within at least some time, someone has been in here and poking around. And here I found the issue. Here I found the problem right here. It's a capacitor that's decided to take an early retirement and check out. And he completely burnt off the board and he brought the traces with him off. And yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess. It's the first layer of the motherboard, the green isolation layer that you have between the layers, has burnt off because of the heat. So I have to clean off the area. And I thought it looks like the pads were still okay, but as soon as I started scratching a little bit, I noticed that no, it's not the layers. It's the second layer, and the second layer is in this case, at least at this on this particular spot, is going straight to ground. So that I can still use that. I can still use the ground part, but I need to figure out where the other end is going, which I've done now after a lot of research. But before I can fix that, I need something to repair the solder mask on the layer, so I can isolate them, which is not a huge deal neither. I need either solder mask and a UV light, or I need now my head stopped again, nail polish. Nail polish works pretty well for this also, depending on what job you are doing. Of course, solder mask is professional and it's the best way to do it. But if you're on a budget, then it might be cheaper with nail polish. But here I'm once again. I'm checking everything. I'm checking if I can see anything damaged on the main power rail that supports power for both the CPU and the GPU. And I'm basically checking everything for everything that I can see that looks burnt or damaged, or if I can see a chip with a crack in or something like that, that would make sense. But everything else is looking fine. It's just that particular corner of the laptop that's yeah, a bit sad to say the least. So, and what I'm doing here is basically just trying to remove that capacitor as carefully as possible without destroying anything. The biggest issue I'm gonna have after removing this capacitor and replacing it is that I have no idea what value that capacitor has. I have no clue. So I have a bunch of them laying. If you look down in the left corner of the screen or of the video, you see between the screws, you have one short screw and one long screw that I put in correct order. And in between those two, there is a bunch of these ceramic capacitors. So I'm gonna try to replace it with one of them, and hopefully it fixed the problem. This particular capacitor works as a filter or something for the GPU. I don't know. I haven't checked any further, but since it's a screen issue, I would guess that it has something to do with it. Hopefully this is the issue, but let's see. Let's see. Let's continue. And on a second note, I had a lot of people asking me which software I'm using to edit my videos and to get everything done. And I'm using Kden Live. I'm running Linux. So I left Windows a long time ago. Even though Windows is a lot more convenient and a lot more simple in many ways, Linux has a lot of other benefits. I fell in love with it. Today, a few years ago, but if you would go 5, 10 years back in time, when it came to Linux, then you really needed to know, not necessarily coding, but you had to understand at least certain things, know how to write everything, and able to be just to be able to update the computer, or download software, or whatever you felt like doing. You really needed to do some not hardcore coding, but you still needed to know a little bit of coding. Here I'm checking for screws and stuff before I start lifting the motherboard out. I'm taking out the RAM memories as well to make sure that there is no screws underneath the RAM, because I made that mistake on a different computer that I repaired for a friend of mine, which ended up with me cracking the motherboard. And I actually managed to fix it. It took me weeks. I had to sit and file down every layer of the motherboard as finely as I could, and then connect layer to layer with tiny cables, which actually worked. It's the computer is still working. He is still using it, so it did work, but it wasn't beautiful by any means. And it took a lot of time because I had to isolate the layers between every time I did a connection and so forth. So yeah, it took quite a while. And here I'm just removing cables and everything so I can get the motherboard out of the laptop. And I'm just checking to see that it's not stuck to anything, which it isn't. It's only this cable. So I remove the tape here that I put on top of it, and I pull that flex cable out. Well, I'm trying to pull it out, but it's putting up a bit of a fight. But it starts moving, and I don't want to pull too hard neither, because I've managed to destroy connectors by pulling too hard, because it's almost like they've been sitting together so long, so the layers in the ribbon cable and the layers in the motherboard in the connector has almost fused together, or the pins rather, in the connector. Here I'm cutting the video again to save you some boring stuff, because the only thing I'm doing in between the cut here is cleaning off one side of the motherboard, and I think there would be a lot more interesting things to watch. So here I'm using alcohol and a toothbrush to scrub off the area where we remove the damaged part, to be able to see a little bit better exactly what's going on, and better understand what I need to do. And since I've gone through a whole layer, I need to do some measurements and figure out, because I have 4 vias in the surrounding areas, and 3 of those vias goes to ground, which is no problem, because then I can use the ground plane underneath, so I can solder it straight to that part. But I need to know where the other end needs to be soldered, and that's pretty much where I am at the moment. And I have cleaned everything off. I have figured out which via it needs to be connected to, so I just need to fix that. But unfortunately, I don't have any solder mask, and I don't have any nail polish at the moment. I'm gonna try to get my hands on some later on, but at the moment I don't really have much more. Here I'm just absorbing most of the alcohol to remove it, to make it easier to see what I'm doing and what's going on. And it's a very small area. It's a tiny capacitor. I'm not gonna say tiny, because I have seen smaller. But this particular capacitor, I would say it's about 1.5 millimeter long and 1 millimeter in width. So it's small enough that you barely see it. I could barely see the vias with my eyes as is, and that's why I'm using the loop. Um, but yeah, so let's continue. I'll be back when I have something more interesting to show you. Yeah, here you see my issue. I have a ULEZ loop and it works perfectly fine. It magnifies enough for me to see what's going on. But there is built-in light, but it doesn't really work as it's supposed to. Plus I need to sit and hold the loop, which will remove one of my hands from being able to operate. And here I'm using the loop and one of the ends of a pincer to scrape off all the burnt stuff and everything that's just trash, so I can see exactly what's going on, what is going where, who is doing what, and why is it doing that, pretty much. So that's what I'm doing here. And as you can see, I'm still cleaning off the area to see exactly what's going on. Is during this time I realized that we have burned through a layer. So when this capacitor decided to die, he got super hot and he burnt so hard or so hot, so he actually removed an entire layer and the whole traces and everything just came off. So here I need to find a way to repair the layers or repair the damaged solder protection or solder silk or screen or what you want to call it before I start to solder back the broken part. It's no biggie. It's a fairly easy thing to do if you can see properly. So I'm continuing here to clean off the whole area. I'm gonna cut the video here shortly because this cleaning is gonna take a long time, and I can guarantee you don't want to sit and wait. So here we go. We are cutting. We will be right back in a second. And now we are back. And what we're gonna do now is try to zoom in a little bit so you can see a little bit more of what's going on here. And I have a really bad tripod, but you're gonna have to bear with me. And here is the area. You can kinda see the dark spots. It's not perfect, but you can kinda see the dark spots around the golden area or the copper area. And the copper area that you see there is actually the other layer and the layer that we want to avoid. So here is one via going to ground, but the whole ground plane is connected to the same ground, so I can use that anyway. And here I'm pointing at this via, but this via is actually not, this is also going to ground, so it won't have any effect. So what I need to do is connect it to a different point. Here I'm also checking the bottom side of the motherboard to make sure that nothing has been burnt there also, but everything is looking fine. Cutting again. And finally I'm back. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm starting to try to add solder to the solder joints or to the points where I need to add solder in order to get this repaired. And I realized pretty quickly that it's actually better for me before I start adding solder to go and get solder mask or something similar in order to get this repaired. I did start, and it is possible, it is physically possible, even though I have a really bad solder iron. it is physically possible to repair this, but it's gonna take a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of effort. But I'm fine with that. That's perfectly fine. It's, as I said, I'm learning a lot from this, so it's just fun. So, but yeah. So what I'm doing here is I'm just adding solder to the motherboard to the point. So here I'm actually adding to the wrong point, so I have to redo that. But yeah, yeah, enjoy. Actually, this is kind of the almost the end of the video here. I have one more thing I'm gonna add in here in a second, so you can see exactly the issue that occurred. But cutting for now. All right, all right. So here we got the video of how the laptop is acting, and it's you can't really tell that well on the video, but there is an image and then it disappears, it starts banding and just disappearing, and then it's coming back, and yeah, it's a mess. But what you're gonna do, right? So let's try to fix this.